Why is it that at the very moment being data driven is shifting from competitive advantage to survival requirement, most organizations are still struggling with it? They're stuck low on the data maturity curve. The reality is that few organizations today have anything close to a complete ecosystem where data flows across an organization from raw information into insights that drive business value, decisions, and actions. Even fewer can measure their success and optimize their approach for continuous improvement. Why? Because the way data and tools have proliferated across organizations has created a fundamental problem: short term gains that lead to long term limitations. And the process of transforming data into actionable insights has become fragmented, hindered by ad hoc collaboration and unclear ownership. While individuals may have more insight than ever before, there's a hard limit to what they can achieve on their own. Most systems don't talk to each other, and even if they could, it's difficult or impossible to correlate information across them. And the paradox, as everyone in your organization becomes a data analyst, at least to some degree, the need for data professionals only becomes more critical, not less. Now, you might be thinking AI and capabilities like conversational analytics will solve all of your problems. You'll just type in questions in natural language, you'll get answers. No data cleanup's going to be needed. No data specialists are going to be needed. Yeah, it is another step forward, but it too has its limits, for now at least. It's the latest version of the holy grail that people have been chasing since SQL was invented over 50 years ago to be that non technical query language. And regardless, it can't solve the fundamental underlying problem. If you want to reposition your organization to be truly data driven, you have to start with the foundations. Today, we're exploring the Insight Supply Chain Framework, a structured approach to organizing your data in teams and systems that enables collaboration and drives genuine business value. Created by Dr. Duru Ahanotu, leader of Tag1's data science team, the Insight Supply Chain Framework gives you a strategic blueprint for making the fundamental decisions that determine whether your data drives maximum value or remains untapped potential. Should your data teams be centralized or distributed across business units? Do you need specialized roles, or can generalists handle all the work? How should teams be structured to foster collaboration that turns your data into action? By answering these and other questions strategically, not arbitrarily, you create a clear pathway for data to flow through your organization. You establish career paths for data professionals, which is critical to attracting and retaining scarce talent. And you build an ecosystem that evolves as your data maturity grows. It's not going to solve all of your problems, but this is the foundation that enables you to move from not being as successful as you want with your data to being truly data driven. There's a lot to unpack here. So, this is the first in a series of podcast episodes on the Insight Supply Chain Framework. Today, you'll hear the origin story and get an overview of the framework. In future episodes, we'll go deeper into critical topics, including the centralization versus decentralization decision, the DOM or data org matrix, and how it plays into that, how AI adoption factors into the framework, and we'll provide more insight into the data maturity curve. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to Tag1 Team Talks, the Tag1 Consulting podcast. Business intelligence, BI, has been the standard approach for decades, but it's outdated. Today, we're talking about what's replacing it, the Insight Supply Chain Framework. I'm Michael Meyers, Managing Director at Tag1, and today I'm joined by Dr. Duru Ahanotu, the creator of the Insight Supply Chain Framework and the leader of Tag1's data strategy team. Duru, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here.
Duru is one of those people who embodies everything I love about working at Tag1. Forgive me, Duru, but you're brilliant. You're incredibly insightful, and you're really easy and fun to talk to. Your background is fascinating and really diverse. Like a lot of people who work here, 3 degrees from Stanford, including a PhD in management science and engineering. You've built expert systems diagnosing manufacturing robots. You worked in data science at Yahoo, Dictionary.com. You worked at a startup acquired by Microsoft, where your team worked on pricing methodologies and optimization solutions that earned a patent. But I think what I love the most is how you think about problems and how clearly you're able to communicate those ideas. Like when we were preparing for this podcast, it was just so easy. But before we get into that Insight Supply Chain, I have to give everyone a little bit of insight into Tag1. Tag1 is the number two all-time contributor to Drupal, the world's second most popular content management system. For nearly 20 years, we've been the architects of the open web, leading the creation of the software and the best practices that power millions of websites and hundreds of thousands of organizations worldwide. We're a full-service strategic partner, applying that same architectural expertise across technologies and throughout your organization. From discovery and design to building and scaling complex applications, we lead AI strategy and implementation, design and manage infrastructure, and architect large-scale web applications across a wide range of platforms. We're trusted by industry leaders including Sumitomo, NTT Data, the European Patent Office, and the American Federation of Teachers to solve mission-critical challenges and build lasting solutions. Check out tag1.com to learn how we can help you too. So, Duru, let's start from the beginning. Can you tell me
Yeah.
the origin story? Where did this concept of the insight supply chain first come from?
So it came from my days working at Yahoo, where I first got into management and leadership. And what happened is that I found myself in a position where I had to grow my SVP of the data team. I was in a centralized data team, asked me to grow out a full service data analytics and data science team to service our product teams globally. It took me about a year. I grew it out to about 20 people. It included what we would call business analysts, what we called at that time insights analysts. And you'll see in my framework, I've included that title or role. And it also had data scientists at the end there. And so together, that team we created a centralized data analytics, or sometimes we might call it a data team, to service Yahoo's product teams and marketing actually across the globe. Shortly after I finished that, um, the CEO decided, you know what? I don't think we should have a centralized data analytics team. We should have a decentralized one. And it was actually a unique restructuring process because the decision of where we went didn't come from the top. We actually got to decide where to go. And where I decided to go was over to marketing, partially because it was the one of the last organizations in the company that still had a centralized role. So I could still touch pretty much every aspect of the business. Now, in the middle of that, I had gone through several restructurings at Yahoo. I mean, I think this was maybe year four at Yahoo, and this was the one of many reorganizations. And it just struck me that the question struck me in my mind, why do organizations constantly go through this cycle of centralizing and decentralizing and then back again? Because to me, from my perspective, where I sat in the organization, it seemed almost capricious. It almost seemed like it was just a preference of whoever happened to be in leadership. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to create a framework that will um, help model this in a structured framework. And that's how the Insight Supply Chain came about. It came about from my experience in building out a large team for a global organization, but then also trying to wrestle with how would I guide future executives on how to decide when it's actually good to centralize your data team versus decentralizing it. And then I grew the concepts from there.
Why the metaphor, the supply chain?
Yes. So that's kind of my bias. I was manufacturing, sorry, not a mechanical engineer as an undergrad, and I'd always wanted to be part of the revitalization of American manufacturing. So the supply chain metaphor just came naturally to me because of that, but also because of the way we organized our work. And back then, things were much more sequential than they are now. Now it's a little bit more complicated than just a sequential step-by-step process of, going from data to insights. But I was looking for a metaphor that would just resonate, that was very easy to explain, easy to visualize, right? So in the insight supply chain, you start with the raw data, just like, in a manufacturing system, there's the raw data, data engineers doing data mining. It just seemed to fit that whole metaphor. And then they are the ones responsible for supplying that data over to the next step, which is the data analyst who organizes, who looks for structure, who does queries on the data. And then from that mode, or node move over to what, again, in this framework is called the insights analysis, which speaks the language of the business. So understands how to take the data that's been organized by the data analyst and put it in a way that the business folks can understand and also can advocate, can evangelize, and can promote those ideas throughout the organization. So that's the sequential, metaphor that I developed. And then, of course, from there are all sorts of flavors in terms of how you mix and match or organize those different modes.
I love the name. Um, but why not like, you know, I started out the show by saying, business intelligence is an outdated term.
Yeah.
Why not just like work within the existing framework? Why create a new framework? Why did you want to distance yourself from the concepts and frameworks behind BI?
Yes. So another reason why I came up with this framework is because I've always been concerned with organizations' inability to provide clear career paths for data professionals. And to me, in particular, the term business intelligence does not offer a clear career path for data professionals. Not only does it, and it also doesn't describe a whole ecosystem, right? So I wanted to come up with a framework that speaks to both an ecosystem where data is moving from one form into insights that drives business value and decisions and action, but also a place where people can see themselves moving as well in this system and progressing in their careers. So business intelligence made sense when it came out in the 80s and 90s. Data was kind of a monolith, right? IT reigned supreme over all things data. But now, as we sit here in this more modern, in this era, IT almost is not always even in charge of the data ecosystem. It can be a whole data organization in of itself. So to me, business intelligence as a term just is too confining. And not to mention, in my coming up in becoming a data leader, business intelligence or business analysts were one part of the data ecosystem. So to me, it was just confusing to elevate that term to go from one part of our ecosystem to basically be an all-encompassing term. Really a new term, a new way of thinking seemed appropriate.
It seems like a very holistic picture, how information,
Yeah.
goes across the organization, how you capitalize on that information and turn it into something you can execute on in results, career paths of individuals, how you
Hmm.
should and shouldn't, decentralize, which is something that's frustrated me on the engineering side. I can't tell you the number of organizations I've been through that, we're going to be siloed, we're not going to be siloed, we're going to be in matrix, we're going to be, and it is capricious. Like I
Sorry, and
swear
I
there's
can't speak to
no
that one. Sorry.
I know we're focused on data engineering here, but it is a common parallel. Um,
Hmm.
can let's dig in more to the framework itself, right? Like, give me a
Yeah.
better sense of, what it is and how it works and all these different components.
Yeah. So one thing I learned from my marketing folks and from actually my studies I did some classes in the business schools that every framework needs a two by two, particularly, management consultants always have a two by two matrix. Um, and so if I were to show that matrix, and sorry, I'm going to be waving my hands a little bit, the axes of my two by two matrix is on one side, there's the specialization versus generalization. Um, spectrum. And then the other axis, let's just call it the x-axis, is the centralized versus decentralized question. And then each of the quadrants then is a particular strategy, a particular way that you want to run your business, and a particular way in which people are going to be offered career paths. So let's take one of those quadrants. The one that really applied most directly when I was building out the 20-person team, which is it was a centralized data team, but I had very specialized data professionals. So in that quadrant, what the strategy of the company is that people are going to grow their careers as specialists. So I'm going to have those specific roles that I talked about earlier. And we are going to be a service shop across business units. Now, say you want to have a decentralized system, which is what we went to when the CEO flipped the switch. Well, in that different model, now you have the experts and the specialists, but now they are scattered across the organization and they don't service the whole organization. They service their particular business unit. That's a very different orientation. It's a greater challenge to offer the data professionals career paths because they're going into organizations that they may be the only data professional, maybe they're one of several. I just happen to be fortunate that when I went to marketing, there were lots of data professionals. I actually brought a portion of my team as well, and I built out what eventually got called the data science and data engineering team in marketing analytics. So yeah, and I forgot that component of my whole story is that when I went to marketing, I actually took on data engineering for the first time. And that was really what also helped crystallize my concept because for the first time, I was managing engineers. At that time, data engineering wasn't really a thing. There were people who were doing data engineering were typically software developers who just had a shine for data and decided to go down that path. And so I was actually managing engineers and doing the whole thing, learning how to do that management side. So, but anyway, so in those quadrants then define the strategy that the company wants to apply. How do you think about your data? Are you going to make data your core competence? And Yahoo had to make data its core competence, or is data just sort of it's a byproduct of what you're doing. And if it's as a byproduct of what you're doing, then for instance, you don't need data experts. Maybe you need a generalized set of skills. You can decentralize folks and so on. So that's the beginning of the framework. And it allows a company to decide right up front, make a very conscious decision. Okay, what is my orientation, my company's orientation towards data? Okay, I belong in this particular quadrant if I want to effectively apply that strategy.
And do organizations move across the spectrum with some fluidity? Like, is there a reason why an organization would switch from decentralized to centralized? Is it really up to the executive? Like, how should that work?
Well, you can imagine my bias is I would like not to leave it up to the executive, and I would like them to consult with me and we'll apply the two by two matrices to their situation. Yes, so I don't this framework is not meant to be rigid, but it is meant to be structured. And I think you might appreciate the difference, right? Structure allows you to make very rational moves. It allows you to explain to your people why it makes sense to go from this state to another state. So, for instance, let's just take a company's life cycle or its trajectory where data is just a byproduct of what they're doing.
Mhm.
At some point, they may realize, oh my goodness, actually, this data stuff is actually a strategic advantage for us, in a competitive advantage for us in the marketplace. We better get more serious about how we think about the specialists that we need to deliver data products, right? So you may decide that if data is going to be a competitive advantage for me, I want to have, I want to move from, and I'm just, of course, making up this scenario. I want to move from this place where I have generalists, and generalists might be, hey, my finance people are doing data stuff, my marketing people are doing data stuff, my sales people are doing data stuff. And instead, I realize, you know what? I want to hire a data engineer, a data analyst, a data scientist, and I want this team of specialists to
Mhm.
create my data products that I go to market or I accompany my services or products with this specialized data application. So that's one example of how a company may decide to move from one state to another or one configuration of the inside supply chain to another one.
Is it how organizations are like predominantly organized? And what I mean is, we sort of live in a world where everybody is or should be a data analyst to some degree, right? You do need
Mhm.
your finance people to be doing things. You like everybody in the organization needs to be doing it to some degree, but I am not a data scientist. I am not a specialist. It's not my focus area. Um, you know, uh, is there some sort of hybrid model, or is it based on more the main classification?
Yeah, so there's a way you can do a hybrid model, which is let's again just go back to the centralized model where you have a team of data experts and they are servicing different business units. Well, within those different business units, there may be data people, right? And those data people don't have the full set of expertise in a particular area. And what you're doing is supplementing their capabilities. So finance is a great example. Actually, both finance, marketing, and sales, all of those are great examples. Finance people, of course, are very great with numbers. They they oftentimes can do queries, but maybe they can't do data pipelines to really well, and they can't standardize the data flows that they need to have a consistent, robust set of numbers, for their reporting. Well, then call on the centralized data team, and they supplement the data skill sets in that particular business unit, for example. So yeah, we are of course moving to a world, with generative AI and no code and conversational analytics and all these great fancy things that AI is allowing us to do, where more and more people are going to be their own, they're going to have greater power to do data analysis themselves. But I will always contend that the specialized knowledge of the data expert or the data professional is not going to go away anytime soon.
Definitely, and, highly beneficial. Um, I think of some of the organizations that we work with, they don't have specialized data teams. They,
Hmm.
they they might need them, but they don't have them yet. If
Hmm.
you're an organization that is looking at your framework and model, what's the best place to get started, right? Like these are great ideas. This framework makes a lot of sense. How do I start to put it into practice?
Yeah. So, uh, almost like with every project, there would be a discovery phase, right? So, who and where are all your data assets right now in terms of the people and the pipelines, and how are you using that data? It may be a big spaghetti mess, which is the worst case scenario, or maybe it's very well thought out, but it's in the wrong places, right? So that's the discovery phase. Like, what is your current state? And then let's compare that current state to where you think your business should be. I mentioned again, is data going to be a byproduct of what you do as a business, or is it your competitive advantage? You have to make that call where you are. And so, is there a fit then between, and I'm just going to take the data as a competitive advantage case, is there a fit between that orientation and the folks that you have, and where the data sits and how you structured your whole data ecosystem to service those people and the products and the services? If there's a mismatch, then yes, a reorientation needs to be done, again, according to the principles of the inside supply chain. So it's just like almost every other project, right? It's the gap analysis framework that you would use to figure out how to proceed.
We talked about how BI is something that has become outdated. We live
Hmm.
in a fast moving world, right? Where new terms every day, new technologies. Dare I say it, AI. Is driving the way. How does your
Hmm.
framework accommodate rapid change and evolution? What are you thinking? Where is this going? And can this avoid the fate of BI?
Yes. Well, you never know, right? 100 years from now, there'll be something else that we can't even contemplate right now. But in this moment that we're in, I have been heartened to see that my inside supply chain actually still applies, because I've identified the key components. Now, whether, I talked a bit again about data engineering, data analytics, and insights analytics as key roles, but there is nothing so strict in this framework that says each of those roles has to be a specific person or a specific set of people. You can have one person that covers all of those roles. Like, for instance, there's this term out there now called the data artisan. So the data artisan is this person who who is so expert, but also so broad in their expertise that they actually can operate along the entire inside supply chain. But in doing their work, if you were to break down what they do, you would still see the inside supply chain at work, right? You would still see that artisan figuring out how to get the data, figuring out whether they need to craft their own specialized pipeline or a standardized pipeline. And then they will do their data analysis. They'll do SQL. They might decide there's a particular model or machine learning has to be applied. And then they're going to do the insights analysis, which is then to convince the business to act on the results that they've come up with. Those to me are the fundamentals and the basics of a data team or a moving data to insights. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. The technologies and the ways in which insights gets delivered into the organization based on data, driven by data, can change, but that basic fundamental flow, I think, is going to be pretty sticky for some time. And that's going to be my claim for this podcast. We can check in a few years and see how that's going. So you mentioned AI. So let me just specifically address this. And I have a very, I'm developing more and more pet peeves the more I see people talk about how AI is going to undermine data analytics. Oh, data science is done. Oh, on and on and on it goes. And one of the examples I have is, and I guess I shouldn't name the vendor here, but their data analytics platform is or has rolled out conversational analytics. And one of the memes that they created is they show this organization where there are all these fraught data professionals and they don't have time to do anything. It's like, hey, we've got a solution. Your data professionals, and I think they call them data analysts, they never have time to get done everything that you executives want to do. Well, we have a magic solution, which is conversational analytics. All you have to do, I mean, this is kind of the marketing message, right? All you have to do is sit down at your computer, type in natural language. You want to see the sales results for the last 12 months. Boom, there. You don't have to go ask any data experts. You don't have to get a data scientist to run a regression model. You just type out your request and boom, there it is. So, major pet peeve for me because one, I have been through this many times in past data teams, leading data teams, which is this tension. There's always going to be this tension between the executive or somebody who needs some data answer right now versus the data team's interest, which is in creating standardized products like dashboards, like pipelines that can answer these questions without someone having to ask for something special to be done. So what you want to do, of course, is over time you can see the pattern in the questions that people ask, and then you just create the standard dashboards that they can go and ask those questions or find out the update. So when I see that meme that shows, oh, the data professionals, they have no time. One, I say, well, why not think about reorganizing the way you work? Maybe it's because you are bombarding them with all these nitpicky questions and not giving them the time to build out the standardized tools that would answer your questions. Trying to solve that problem with conversational analytics is going to lead organizations to trouble. I will almost guarantee it. But here's the problem. I look at conversational analytics as an attempt to just try to shortcut the entire insight supply chain, right? That somehow the data will just magically be there available in a condition that will answer every question that you have magically and with ease. Even just saying that, we know that's wrong, right? Because some data professional has to think about what are the possible questions that might be asked of the data and how am I going to create the data pipeline, the semantic layer, the metric definitions, all of that stuff takes a lot of thinking. And that's a data professional sitting there in collaboration with the executives to figure out how best to structure the data. And then even after that part is done, you need to educate the users as to what are the scenarios. What is the sandbox in which you can play safely, right? We all know that a system has its boundaries. And there are some questions that some executive or someone may ask that whose answer will lead you astray in ways that you won't even appreciate until somewhere down the line some business's decision goes awry, when all it would have taken is if you just sat down with your data professional, talk to them about what you're trying to do, you could have shortcut a major error. So all that to say, my major pet peeve in all of this is that no, data professionals, we're not going anywhere. You still need us. As long as data exists, the insights supply chain will exist in some form or fashion, and it's going to take data professionals to help make sure your insight supply chain runs smoothly. No matter how you shape the roles, no matter whether you centralize or decentralize, whether you have generalized skill sets or specialized skill sets, you're still going to need us. Sorry. And not sorry for you. Sorry for the folks who are still trying to market things like conversational analytics as a way to replace the need for data professionals.
The frustration is real. Um, the magic solutions.
Yes.
um,
Yes. And then, of course, and that's time eternal, right? In software, there's always these magic solutions. And the Holy Grail, what's funny is, and sorry, I'm going to do a quick sidebar. I listened to this podcast, the founder of SQL, the guy who created SQL. It was so fascinating to listen to him. The dreams that he had way back when SQL was created, was that he could create a language such that it didn't require technical skills to query data, to get insights from data. So this has been the holy grail forever. And I know you're laughing because, of course, the way that SQL is now, there's so many different flavors, there's so many different nuances and syntaxes that SQL absolutely requires some deep technical knowledge and awareness. So even a tool that way back in the day was supposed to create this no non-technical data access for everybody, it didn't work. And we've had different stages of this along the way. And conversational analytics and whatever's coming next will just be another phase of that search for the Holy Grail.
I mean, it's better than writing a query in assembly language, I guess, but it's not
Well, yeah,
exactly.
it was definitely so right. This is it is a progression. So it was definitely
Yeah,
better than what people had before SQL was invented, for sure.
yeah. A big step forward, but not exactly natural language. Um, Speaking of the professionals, I know that, it's hard to pinpoint this because lines are blurry, organizations are structured differently. But because,
Hmm.
people play a really important role in this, at a high level, can you, kind of give a sense of what you see as the key roles or players in an organization and where they fit, engineers, analysts, how does it typically break down in your mind?
Yeah, so I like to think of this as right, roles first, and then how do you assemble the folks or the expertise around those roles? Um, and for instance, one of the interesting twists that we've had in recent years in the data world is the analytics engineer, which is supposed to be this person who bridges data engineering and data analytics. So this is another flavor along the insight supply chain, right? So this is someone who kind of sits upstream, but not all the way upstream to data engineering. Um, and so the way I see the roles is I'm always oriented insights first. So I think there's been a greater awareness, and I see this with the various YouTubers and whatnot, that a data analyst can't just be all about crunching numbers. A data analyst needs to know how to talk the language of the business and how their work is going to translate into value and insights. And so for those folks, upskilling, their career paths is indeed to make sure that they always know what is the business problem that they need to be solved. So ultimately, everyone in the inside supply chain, I say all the way, upstream to downstream, should understand what is the problem that we're trying to solve, and what is the insight that the business is trying to get at, and that should structure all of the work for everybody in the inside supply chain. So if you talk about the key roles, I'm still going to go back to it. It's still going to be data engineering, it's going to be data analytics, and it's going to be insights analytics. And I know for my data scientist colleagues out there who are wondering there's no place for data scientists. Well, actually, to me, data science is an amalgamation of all those different roles. Some data scientists focus downstream, which is the insights analytics component. Most data scientists, I think, play in the data analytics plus insights analytics um, realm. And then these artisans that I referred to earlier, those are the folks who do everything. They can do data engineering just as well as they can do insights analytics. And this is another reason why I like my insight supply chain is because you can take a role like data science and understand, more accurately what a data scientist does or what a data scientist can do and how you might fit it in different components of your strategy. Yeah.
Duru, that was great. We're going to do a series of follow-up episodes on the insight supply chain. We want to talk about tactical. We talk about strategic. We want to talk about your future thinking. Can you just give us some quick teasers? What's coming up in these episodes? What do you want to cover in each? Where is this framework going?
Yeah. So first of all, AI is real, and I have big hopes and dreams for how I will incorporate the world of AI into the insight supply chain. And this will actually be an even more comprehensive model where I'm going to include elements of knowledge management, cognitive science, and then AI as sort of an orchestration layer for helping to organizations to really fine tune the way that the inside supply chain works according to the set of skills that an organization has. So that's like my really moonshot future thinking. And then, there's all sorts of additional nuances we can discuss about how to really roll up your sleeves on the tactics of the inside supply chain, and then also how to take a step back and really think about the different ways in which the strategic framework plays out based on different, case studies. So there's all sorts of places that we can go. Lots of teasers there for you and everybody in the audience.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Fun as always. Thank you to all our listeners. You guys can send us feedback at info@tag1.com. Please check out our past episodes at tag1.com/podcasts. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss any future conversations. Special thanks to Tracy Cooper and June Gregg for producing today's episode with input from Hank Van Zyl and Casey Bowden. Until next time, take care.